Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our final, so sad to say it's our final talk for YES as part of our speaker series featuring the incredibly inspiring Dr. John Maeda, who will share a conversation with Xavier Massé on resiliency and recovery. My name is Anna Rita Mores, and I'm the chair for the School of Design at George Brown College, and I'd like to welcome you all to our final talk. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that George Brown College is situated on the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation and other Indigenous people who have lived here over time. We're grateful to share this land as treaty people who learn, work, and live in the community with each other. Across the School of Design, we remain committed to identifying and removing systemic barriers to accessing college programs and services, and are committed to working towards strategies, tools, and actions to better support our Indigenous student population. Now, in a commitment to build connections and opportunities for students to engage with design's visionaries, YES has featured a week-long lecture series, 8 lectures to be precise. The design-focused speaker series has been cultivated in an effort to provide dynamic perspectives and unique discussion opportunities for members of our community, including students and faculty alike. Honest advice for designers from really good designers connects the School of Design with those who've impacted the industry on a local and global scale through a focused thematic-based lecture. This is followed by an opportunity for conversation and dialogue using the chat. Please feel free to relay all of your questions for John there. And before I introduce John, I wanted to take a moment for our final giveaway of the year-end show to the first person who signed up to today's talk, and that's Sherry Huang. Sherry, you've won a copy of John's book, The Laws of Simplicity, so please send us a message on Instagram to claim your book. Lots of fascinating stuff in there. With that, I'm proud to introduce John Maeda. John Maeda is an American technologist and product experience leader with a passion for resilience and renewal, which we'll talk a little bit about today. Currently serving as Chief Technology Officer of Everbridge. He's formerly the Sonos Board of Directors, Wieden+Kennedy Board of Directors, Kleiner Perkins Partner, MIT Media Lab, Data Visualization Lead, Publicis Sapient Executive Vice President and Chief Experience Officer, Automattic Head of Design and Inclusion, and 16th President CEO of Rhode Island School of Design, where he is joining us from today. He's the author of books including A Gentle Introduction to AI and Machine Learning, including How to Speak to Machines, and the technology bestseller 2006 Laws of Simplicity. Writing interviews or talks include too many to name here, lots for The Economist, Forbes, USA Today, Fortune, Fast Company, and Esquire. He has several honors, including 3 honorary doctorate degrees, a Time Best Twitter 140, a White House National Design Award, and a Fast Company Masters of Innovation. Moderating the Q&A portion of today's session is Xavier Massé. They will be in discussion with one another. Xavier returned to Toronto in 2017 by way of France to teach and coordinate the interaction design programs at George Brown College's School of Design. Prior to that, he was the Dean of ACV, Creative Schools and Community in Paris, and the Director of International Curriculum Development. Going back to its roots, he actually is a graduate of the internationally renowned school, where he graduated in Paris with a BA in Art Direction and Design and Visual Communication. Xavier shares a 25-year of international media industries career in Canada, the US, India, and France. His creative process towards experiential and interaction design lead him to believe in listening, inspiring, explaining, showing, learning, and an exchange of ideas and initiatives. He is an award winner with the ADCC, the Horizon Interactive Awards, the Design and Art Direction community based in London, England, and the EDF Sharing Energy 2030 International Challenge. Whenever possible, Xavier likes to spend time with his tribe, his spouse, and 3 sons, hiking, canoeing, and traveling. He's also launched for the first time this past year, Bocage, which is his own little cheese shop here in Toronto. Welcome, Xavier and John. I'm now going to turn it over to you for your discussion.
Well, thank you. And welcome, John. Thank you for being with us. All right. Well, we've heard it from Anna Rita. It's quite a resume you have. You've done many things, mostly around the world of design and technology, but art as well. And your fascination for design and technology leads me to my first question, which is, I think, because of your latest position with Everbridge, you might tell us why your latest tech report is about resilience and recovery. Tell us why, and also what do you mean by resilience? What's your definition of resilience, especially in May 2022, and why is it important to talk about that today?
Well, not sure if it's important, but I want to thank you, Professor Massé, for the chance to hang out with you here on the internet. And Professor Ana Rita Morale gave a great introduction. I want to hear her introduction. So it was, I'm sure it's super, super powerful. And you make cheese? You have a cheese shop?
I make cheese for fun, but I sell cheese that others
That's
make.
so cool. That's so cool. So I was wondering, like, cheese is probably resilient. It's temperature resilient, isn't it? It's like you can, I mean, you have to keep it cold, but it can still do okay. Is that correct?
It's the beauty of the product. It has a fairly long shelf life. Fairly, I mean, depending on what kind of cheese we're talking about. But
And does it have to stay cold?
It has to stay at least around 4 degrees. Yeah, 4 degrees Celsius.
Okay. Yeah. Do some cheeses, they last okay when the temperature isn't too warm?
So after that, it impacts the dryness and the moisture, and then so some cheese turns drier than others. But I have the feeling that this interview is turning backwards here.
No. I find that I mean, your background with the cheese thing is just like standing out to me.
Okay. All right.
And you had Maurice Cherry this morning, I understand, and it's so great to get to follow him because I followed him for a long time, and he's had a resilient career as a podcaster. He's made so many podcasts, and so how many has he done so far? 400 something, was it?
We heard
it was
400.
a big number. Yeah. So how does someone keep doing that? How do they stay resilient, even though they know it's easier to give up? Well, I think of these thoughts as kind of examples of, in the one way, you can make a food that's resilient to temperature and age. You can build a kind of set of data points, and data isn't useful unless you get lots of data. So having 400 podcasts or more is incredible data. I find that this ability to be resilient is something that some people are able to think is important to them. And I made the Resilience Tech Report to just understand why. And why do we care about resilience right now? Well, we cared about it for the last couple of years because of the pandemic. We suddenly saw our mortality at scale, and it really bothered us. And so when you are faced with danger, you either want to flight or fight. And so we immediately tried to run away from it, but you couldn't run away from it. And then we decided to fight. Remember putting a mask on for the first time and going to places, and it felt scary, right? But we chose to fight. So resilience is about choosing to fight.
And the interesting thing you said about the mask is, like, it was surprising at first. It was a bit of an adaptation, but now we're feeling the reverse. It's like, we don't want to take it away. We actually want to, I mean, at least here in Canada, there's a lot of people who are actually starting to go into supermarkets and still keeping the mask on. So that's another example of resilience that's sticking with us. The habits. Is it also influenced by the job you're doing these days, working at Everbridge?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, yes, the Resilience Tech Report came from understanding how really dangerous the world is. There's a saying in the security industry, it's not getting more safe in the world. Like, earthquakes are generally constant, but anything involving water or lack of water or fire is just up and to the right. And so we're just going to experience more flooding in the future. As a result, we'll experience more drought on the opposite end. When you have drought, you dry out forests, and that's what creates fires. And this kind of cycle of water and fire is going to keep worsening. I don't mean to sound depressing, mind you. The reason why I bring this up is it's important to ask, how do you be more resilient as an individual or as a company or as a country, knowing that the world is going to keep getting harder to live in?
It's interesting because you're talking about large-scale problems that will have a huge impact on our future. And I just want to go reverse in the spectrum and go a bit more smaller. And then we have a lot of students, I think, listening to us right now. And the meaning of resilience for these people, for our young graduates or even students who are currently on campus, what do you think that would, what would you tell them?
Well, I was at an event a long time ago with Paola Antonelli, who's at the Museum of Modern Art. She's this incredible curator, called most of the interesting trends in materials and technology. There's a new show coming up on design emergencies. So, and actually link to this. There's a new book coming out with Alice Rawsthorne. And I remember, though, this is maybe 20 years ago, maybe, I was at her event, and she asked me, what is the difference between audacity and courage? And I had a really bad answer. So that year, I tried to find the correct answer to that question. And the answer I found is the courage and audacity are very different things. Audacity is usually a signature of youth. You talked about younger people, students. People are audacious because they don't know what is dangerous. So they can just jump into it, right? Courage is different. Courage is, you know what you're going to get into, and still yet you choose to go. So I think that younger people are naturally resilient to bad things because they are audacious, and they also recover quicker. Their bodies recover quicker to pain. I'm sure you've noticed, Professor Maeda, that if you cut yourself when you were younger, you healed much faster. But as you get older, it doesn't heal as quickly. Sometimes it doesn't heal actually too, right? So younger people are resilient, audacious. So older people tend to have to find courage in adopting change, being resilient to change. And as you know, Professor Maeda, from working in organizations of all scales, the larger the organization, nobody wants to change. And it's because it's lost the ability to be resilient. It's fragile. It's the opposite of resilient. And that's a challenge.
You were comparing audacity with courage earlier, and we're referring back to a wonderful conversation you had in the past. I think I saw in one of your talks in the resilience, in the tech report about resilience, I think I saw something you talk about adversity as well. So is there a difference between resilience and adversity?
Oh, well, first of all, I commissioned a calligrapher, Chavali Tsui in New York, to make an ambigram. So you flip it upside down, it reads the same, different way. So it reads adversity, and when you flip it, it reads resilience. It's a great fodder for, I don't know, you can stare at it. I can stare at it for, well, not hours, but minutes at least. I'm like, whoa. It's really nice work. Resilience comes from adversity. Only if there's adversity do you need to become resilient. But I want to caveat that there's a new book coming out about just like human nature, but it covers this thing that I found along the way, that resilience is not a good thing. And the example given is, if you are an underrepresented minority working in an organization or even going to school, and you're told to be more resilient, stick up, be tough, whatever kind of thing, that's not fair. So resilience can be bad. Society expecting people to be resilient is not necessarily a good thing. We all have different levels of privilege, different levels of privilege lets us be more resilient. And so we have to consider that when it involves people.
That's a very good point. It's a very good point, especially when it comes with underprivileged people. That makes me think about some groups here in Canada, especially the Indigenous people, where it would be unfair to ask them what you just talked about. Actually, when we talk about the adversity turning into resilience with typography, it remind me an old logo from the 80s, Newman, the brand Newman. Remember the brand Newman?
Newman.
And it was doing the same thing. It was like becoming the other. It was very
Sonos is also the same too.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, it's a clever idea,
Optimism. Let's talk about optimism, because optimism. There was a talk earlier, I think a couple of days ago, the optimism in design, which was fascinating. And then I think that we cannot talk about resilience and diversity and recovering fast without talking about optimism. I think that would be an element that could help us recover faster. What do you think of that?
Well, if you look at the resilience tech report, you go to resilience-tech.report. I have different models I've found. And one model is a model of grief. So something bad happens. And then what happens is you're interested, your valence goes up, and then it goes down because you're like, I don't know if I like this. And then it goes back up and you think, oh, maybe it's not good. And it usually goes down and you become angry usually. It's kind of like if you've ever an accident happens, you try to find maybe it's no, it's not okay. And maybe, and then it's no, I'm really upset. When you're in that upset, angry, valence state down, some people stay down there. But some people who have more privilege can find the optimism in getting back up, So I think optimism is related to how much that person has the ability to recover, which really depends upon so many factors that I don't think it's universal. I hate to be not prescriptive, but I think the more I think about these things that involve people, they're always so different. When they involve organizations, they're roughly more similar. When organizations and bad things happen, we know that it's important to have standard operating procedures to manage the situation. And if the team is trained to do that, they can do that. Sort of end of story. But when you're a human being and you don't have a standard operating procedure file sort of in here, it's awfully hard to recover.
That's a very good point. Our hard drives haven't downloaded the latest.
Related to that, I love this phrase by, when Nelson Mandela passed away, there were just so many quotes sort of shared, and they were so inspiring. And one quote that stuck with me is, "Don't judge me by my successes. Judge me by how every time I failed, I got back up again." I thought that was a beautiful thought. So he was talking about his resilience, not about his success. So, some leaders lead with that kind of motivation. It's kind of optimism, but if you think about it, it's not that optimistic because it means you're falling down. Like in the creative field, we say fail faster, but nobody wants to fail.
I pick up on that a little bit because, we deal with a lot with young students, young people. And the last 2 years have been hard on them. And this idea, especially in design, where we keep telling them, go for it, try it. Even if you don't succeed on your first attempt at designing, you try again, many iterations. That's how it works, how design works. So when you compound that with what you just said, which is nobody likes to fail, how do we deal with those two ideas of not liking to fail, but at the same time teaching how to fail and then recover faster again?
All right, so let's do two things. Number one, let's talk about the pandemic. because the pandemic was an interesting moment where something bad happened. Like, have you ever, Professor Massé, been in an area with an earthquake?
Small ones, very small ones.
And did it last? How long did it last?
10 seconds. Not
Okay.
even.
So, have you ever carried a glass of wine or a glass of water and dropped the glass?
Never. No, just kidding. Yes, I have.
And then how long does a glass shatter for?
The actual shattering?
Yeah.
Half a second, maybe? I don't know.
Short time. So
yeah,
bad things usually happen in short time intervals. They're acute. Some bad things, like a flood, you flood your basement, maybe you have to have a week or something. I think what the younger people are experiencing is that they had to deal with a pandemic that didn't go away after the first week. It didn't go after the first month. It didn't go after even at the first year. It's still ongoing. So they've experienced a unique kind of failure that never got better. And so I think that's pretty hard to internalize as a younger person who's supposed to be audacious, right? They're in the middle of their audacity, and now they've got to be courageous. What is that? So it reminded me of, because I'm on RISD campus today, I remember talking with a printmaking professor, and he said to me how every different type of art or design has a different kind of time process to outcome. So for instance, if I'm a printmaker, I will sketch on stone or copper in reverse. And then finally, when I'm done, then I'll send it through, print it. Or if I'm a glass artist, I'm right there in front of the furnace, and like it's happening. Or if I'm a painter, I'm just sort of making it happen over many layers. Or if I'm a graphic designer, I'm like making the ideas, but production is so far away. Or if I'm an illustrator, that is so my point is that failure has a time length that we expect. And every type of art making has a different kind of time length of that. Unfortunately, the pandemic is such a long time length that I think younger people have to now expect that, oh, this failure isn't going to last 2 years. It's only going to last a second. I think that's the important leap that they're trying to make if it's that they're having a hard time. And I think it's very hard.
Right. Yeah, the notion of time, especially for young people, is quite something to grasp, especially because I think we've been in an era now where we want fast results, and we also want fast.
I mean, younger people can get a milkshake like in 6 minutes from their mobile phone. I mean, so there's a flip side of convenience too. So I don't know. I think that I'm always impressed with younger people. They are not stuck in the older ways. So I'm hopeful.
Talking about time, I'm just wondering if we have any questions coming from the. I have many questions for you. Don't worry. But
do we have audience questions?
So, hello. Do you have any mantras or things that you remind yourself of when you fall down, feel defeated, and want to get back up?
Oh, thank you, Jasmine. I do actually. I am a big fan of the Batman clip with Christopher Nolan's adaptation of The Dark Knight, where young Bruce Wayne falls into the pit of whatever, the cave where he finds the bats, and then the father goes and rescues him, and then as they're leaving, the Alfred character, his name is so famous, I can't remember it right now, but he says, why do we fall down, Master Bruce? To learn how to pick ourselves up. And I say that to myself, like, oh, this is what learning feels like. Number one, Jasmine. Number two, the thing I do is there is a great video by a person named Fred Kaufman, Kofman. It's in a LinkedIn series on YouTube. It's like 7 minutes long. You don't have to watch, actually, it's probably a half an hour, but just watch the first 7 minutes and you're set. But it talks about a framing of player versus victim. And it goes like this. It goes that, we are wired to want to be the victim. It's like, oh my gosh, I was going to an interview, but the bus was late. Or, like, oh my gosh, I was eating cereal and the milk fell over. So you're the victim. And he says that we're just wired to be the victim. And so how do you train yourself when that occurs, knowing you're becoming the victim, to switch to player? And the player is someone who accepts the conditions that are negative and seeks to take them on, knowing they may fail at making things better. So when I fall down, I have a Batman sort of moment. I try to get that. Or when I fall down, I say, can I switch from victim to player? Can I do that? The third option is to read something called Personal Renewal on the internet. It's free. It's an essay given by John W. Gardner to the McKinsey folks in Arizona in late 1990s. This is long, but if you read this, you will feel better. It is the best medicine known to humankind. Always works. I have people who call me all the time, Jasmine, who are like, it's like really bad. Like, I just lost my job or less than whatever. I said, okay, good. Or it's okay. For some reason, people call me. Maybe I've failed so many times they call me. Personal renewal on pbs.org. You have to read it. I can read that every week sometimes to get back up. But I hope things are better for you, Jasmine. And I hope you can get back up. Give yourself time. It could, could take COVID long. It could be shorter. It could be like dropping a glass short, but good luck.
John, you've done many, many things in your life. There's one maybe you have to try is to do a TV show where you can maybe talk to people who call you, will be the new doctor on.
I don't know if I have advice, but yeah, we'll do our best. So I'm not a professor anymore, so you have Professor Massey and Professor Rita Morales. So I'm just like a guy off the street. Here we go.
I don't know if there's any other question. Here we go. Arjit. I know Arjit very well. Do you think that the ease is making the young less resilient?
I think if you're like an old cranky person, you'd say something like that. I think the ease is making younger people really interesting because they treat space-time differently and they use it differently. Like I mentioned how I was the president of this university that I'm just visiting today. This, by the way, this is my internet from my own, so no worries. I'm not taking anything from the place, but no power too. So this is independent. But I remember I left here to work in Silicon Valley because I just saw this nomadic lifestyle emerging in early 2010s. I lived in Airbnbs. I only took Ubers. This is before Ubers were regular. And I thought it was interesting. Like, I'm going to get into a stranger's car. And I'm going to live in a stranger's house. And it kind of taught me that the younger people are flexible. And so we have to learn from them. And so I've taken every effort I can to learn from younger people. I find that the older you get, the dumber you get. The more important you feel you need to get. I was just, I haven't come back to this campus in 9 years, and I was hanging out with the public safety people. We have a public safety team. They're incredible. They have on their cars Defender of the Arts. And I was telling them how when freshmen move to campus at Rhode Island School of Design, they all come in a column of cars on the street. And so I used to show up in shorts and t-shirt and move the students in to the dorms. And people are asking, why do you do that? And it was to learn what the dreams of these students and their parents were. And people used to say to me, I don't know if that really makes a difference, John. People who are more wise than me, I guess. 7 years later at commencement, I was leaving commencement. And the thing about commencement, if you're president, you're wearing all this fancy stuff all over you. But once you take that off, they're like, I'm this random guy walking around everybody. So I was this random guy leaving the space, and there's this 3-story escalator at the convention center that we used to rent. And so as I got on, a young woman like got on with me with her comments. She had just graduated, and she looked over to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you moved me in freshman year." I said, "Yeah, man, that's you graduating. Yeah, my parents didn't believe you were the president, but you really were, and it was really nice." And so we kind of went down those 3 floors, and it was just kind of, that was worth everything. As you all know, that is the meaning of finding something meaningful.
You were talking about cars earlier, and not having your car, but taking Ubers, which reminding me of now you've come into the habit of making those little car interviews that are.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So now I wanted to understand what a full self-driving technology is. So I bought a Tesla just to understand, like, does it really drive itself? And after I realized, oh, it could do pretty good, I thought, well, what am I going to do? So I'll make some videos. So on my YouTube channel, I make like 4-minute videos on machine learning ideas, concepts. Hopefully be useful. I don't know, but I'm doing that as my side hobby.
And I saw one where you're actually not driving; it's somebody else who's driving. It's Kevin Bethune.
Oh, I was with Kevin. Yes. I just also discovered that this is a great microphone, and I always carry 2 phones, and so I can like interview people while driving too. That's a new method I'm creating.
I'm going to do a really bad metaphor here, but
I like that.
Oh yeah, you like bad metaphors.
That means they're good. It's like a cheese. Oh, this is a really bad cheese. Oh, this is an interesting cheese.
No, no such thing as a bad cheese in my world.
There, see, there we go.
So when you're driving and you stop at the red light and it turns green, what do you see further? What do you see coming? What was there anything that you had one day you had the big bright light coming on your windshield and you had an epiphany or a prophecy of any sort of anything?
Prophecy.
Prophecy.
No, I mean
your bags today.
No, I mean I think I've told many people that I feel very lucky that when I was living in Silicon Valley in my Airbnb world, I used to go jogging in the morning around 4 a.m. Jogging, not running. Jogging means like jogging, not running. And it was always very dark. And I made the mistake of jogging without a light or anything like that. And very important for young people here and older people here, the sidewalk is not flat. It's not a flat. The sidewalk is never flat. There's always sort of plates. So be very careful because your foot can catch the edge of the plate. So anyways, there was a part of the sidewalk that was very bad that I couldn't see. And so my foot caught the edge of it. And then the power of the brain is there to teach you to remember never to do something stupid again. So as I'm falling, it was like slow motion, like, oh, I'm falling. This is not good. And then so I landed on my face and my arm. I broke my arm and my face. And I was lying there. It was like 4:30 in the morning, and I was bleeding. My head was ringing. It's still ringing, by the way. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, what do? I didn't have my phone. And I was just stuck out there, and nobody was coming by. And I thought, wow, this is very humbling. And so anyways, I realized that if I get up, I faint. But if I get up for like 2 seconds and lie down, I'm okay. So I pretended I was a Mars rover, like a robot that had to get back to the power source. So I would get up and lie down, get up and lie down. This is like for 12 blocks. And I remembered I loved people's lawns, the grass. Oh, it felt so good. So I hobbled back, and then I called an Uber to go to the emergency room. And then I remembered going to your optimism point. The doctor said to me, were you wearing a vest or a light? And I said, no. And he said, you could have been hit by a car. And I thought, yeah, I could have been hit by a car. And the next person said, like, can you move your neck? And I said, yes. You're lucky your neck moves. So long way of saying that after that moment, I took a year to come back physically. And I recommend anyone to get hurt because you understand like, wow, I can't open a door. I can't do so many things. And you just really you realize like what you take for granted. So I felt so lucky that happened to me.
Maybe that was another way to build resilience.
Well, that was my red light. That was my awakening call of wow.
That was your green light. That was your green light. Let's see if there's more questions coming from our folks over there. Hello, how do you stay resilient at the time of uncertainty, and at the time of events you don't have control over, but that's still negative?
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, Mary. Well, I have a secret, lucky secret, which is I have a living mom who I like. Some people don't like their parents. That's okay. Some people have really bad relationships. That's okay. Some people don't have parents. That's okay. I'm lucky that I have a mom that is still alive, and I didn't talk to her for 30 years. I was really upset at her, but later years I kind of and then my mom, I realized that I was able to become who I am because my mother was just so supportive, to me at least. She would always say like, "You can do it." I believe in you are the 3 words she would always say. And so, think in later life, bad things happen. She always tells me that she believes in me, even though she has no idea what's going on. So, but I think of that as for those who don't have a mother like that, they have friends. If you have friends that can tell to you, that also helps. If you just have like people like off the street, like myself, like Mary Getson, I believe in you. You're asking a hard question, so I believe in you that you can overcome it. The power of belief in someone else is a good thing. It's something you want to have in your life. Hope that helps.
It is very important. Thank you for that. It's fascinating, John, because I teach interaction design. I've been in the world of design. Actually, my bio, Anna Rita read, talked about 25 years. I should upgrade it to more like 35.
Wow, 25 years, a quarter of a century.
30 years in the world of tech and design, and you've been in the world of tech of design. And here we are here having a conversation about mostly philosophy and psychology, right? So is that
well? Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to reflect on that. I want you to have your.
But like I feel lucky that I left being the professor. I think that I realized I didn't know anything, and so that's why I escaped. I am no longer important. I just work. And I found it, we mentioned our careers are opposite. So like, I love being in the operating world. And there's so many things that I don't know that I enjoy it.
You talk a lot about up and down. And at some point in one of your talks, I picked up the reference in several of your talks about David Bowie.
Love David Bowie.
Fascination with David Bowie being an alien, and also the David Bowie methods. Is that something you talk about?
Yeah, David Bowie method. Oh yes. Well, people ask like, how did David Bowie last so long? Well, number one, very important. So side thing here. So like, I got interested in design because of a designer named Paul Rand, and like I found his work in the 80s, and I was really excited about design. This guy named Paul Rand, and so it was like I don't know how many years, like maybe over a decade later, I was at his house in Connecticut, and I was going to see him, and I only had a 30-minute appointment. And so I was in New York City. As you know, you take maybe a train, then you're in Connecticut, which has no transport, no Uber or whatever. So I get in a cab, I go for like an hour, end up in the forest somewhere. And then I'm like, okay, it's for like a 7:30 meeting, maybe 7:30 maybe. So I should show up there. And then he opens the door and he says, "My assistant is sick today, so you will have to work for me for free." I said, "Oh, okay." So I just sort of stayed there. And then that day I worked on his last book, which is kind of cool because like I found his stuff in his book, and now I'm like working on his last book, and it was bizarre. So anyways, it was like, you know, when you visit someone's house you don't know, it's awkward. And there were no snack bars. So I was getting hungry around lunch. And he's like, you know, 81 years old. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm really hungry kind of thing. And so then he comes over and he gives me like he has a nectarine. He cuts it in half and gives me a half. I kept the nectarine pit, by the way, because it's nostalgic. But I remember him showing me his fan letters. He was like, see this letters? I said, okay, you know, so he said, read that letter there. And it said, Dear Mr. Rand, I really admire your design work, especially the CBS logo, which you may know, he didn't design the CBS logo, but he was testing me. He said, well, what do you think? I said, well, you didn't design the CBS logo. You designed the ABC logo. This is the broadcasting company in the United States. And he said to me, yep. But when you live as long as me, people think you designed everything. So, number one, David Bowie lived a long life. So living a long life is a good thing. But number two, the thing I love about David Bowie is he kept changing his style. He was fearless enough to not depend upon the trick that got him there each time. And I think about why. I think he was trying to become young again each time. So when people ask me, why do I change fields? It's because I think when I get too good at something, I lose what made me smart. And so I have to start over again. An analogy is in karate, in black belts, the white belt goes like the orange, green, or different colors. The goal of the black belt is to use it so much that it becomes white after use. And I always love this metaphor. Yes. You know, Wolfgang Weingart. Remember Wolfgang Weingart, typography expert? I remember, like, I used to go every year to his typography seminar. I did like a special little lecture. It was in Maine, and it was always the same lecture. But on the fifth time I went, I realized each time he's making it simpler.
Right. Wow. Simplicity is not simple. That's what I say to my students. And it takes a long time to grasp that. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's see if I'm sure there are many other questions coming.
Questions. I love questions.
Sofia Messina. Hey, Sofia. Hi, Dr. Maeda. Such an amazing chance to listen to you talk live. What advice would you give to your younger self, if any? Oh, here we go. The famous one.
Oh. Younger self.
Yeah. Well, you should wear light when you go jogging.
I'm not young now. Whenever I meet a younger person of any shape or form, I tell them the lesson I learned in my early 20s, which was, and I was at MIT, and I had graduate students there, Casey Rees and Ben Fry. There are people who really got the generative graphics movement going with something called processing. And they were working on this processing thing. And then they were working on their like real research, you know. And then I was like, I don't know, Ben, Casey, you should work on your real research. And I'm always glad that they didn't listen to me.
Right.
So from that moment forward, I realized I tell everyone, don't listen to me. I'll say, this is what I think, but don't listen to me. So I would just encourage you, put glasses on, Sofia Messina, if someone tells you something, you don't have to listen to them because they could be terribly wrong. You have to be nice in that process too, because otherwise they'll like come after you in some way or form. But it's like, thank you. I like what you think, but I kind of think this. And accept the fact that you may be wrong, they may be right, but being open to that. The other thing is to recognize that some people love to beat you down if you're doing something interesting. Like I remember when I was, using computer code to generate things, and I was in art school, I remembered there was this one professor, Nishikawa, who understood what I was doing because he came from like the whole Carl Gerstner world, and that was all good. And I was like, sitting outside his office, waiting to see him. And then the professor next door to him, was there, and he saw me, and he said, "Hey, can you come in and sit down? I have something to tell you." So he closes the door, and he tells me for 30 minutes how I will never amount to anything, that my work is crap, it's no good, and whatever. And I remember leaving that room thinking wow, if I didn't believe in what I was doing, that would have destroyed me. So just accept the fact that if you're doing something interesting, sometimes people will try to stop you to do it. I don't know if they're bad people. It's just how the physics of ideas occurs. Yes, some people are bad, so be careful of them. But some people just do things they do because it's just the way the world has been built around them, and unfortunately, they act that way.
One form of resilience, actually, to.
Well, again, I have the privilege to be able to manage that adversity and turn it into resilience in that case, but some people don't. So I feel like, it's a complex equation.
It's becoming an algorithm. Another question. Let's take another one. And all right. Whoa, I love your mindset in general and the way you look at the world.
Oh, thank you, Pantea. Well, it's my mom kind of helped me see stuff differently. When you grow up poorer, it's better, actually. Ooh, nacho paintbrush. Actually, it's the Cheeto paintbrush. It's important. I made the Cheeto paintbrush, and also in Cartier Foundation 2005, I had a show there, and I had a special room called I'm Hungry, EYE, apostrophe M, hungry. I had a bunch of, I guess you'd call them like NFTs now, whatever, but I made these generative graphics. And then I also had another room for kids because I wanted to have a contemporary art show that you could bring your children to, or your nieces or nephews or whatever. And so in that room, I had I'm Hungry. It was all food-based interactive graphic installations. One was an endless Cheeto you could draw. You could draw it forever. The other was a broccoli typewriter. There was also a French fry sizzler maker. Anyways, stuff like that. That was an era.
No cheese.
It all runs on PowerPC, unfortunately, so
right.
It doesn't work in 20 something.
Hello, in this era, so many things.
Is that Miho? Is that the Miho? I know Miho. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Miho. In this era, so many things are getting automated. From your perspective, what era do young or old designers should be focused on more than before?
Well, thank you, Miho. If you're the Miho I know, hi, Miho. I don't believe in shoulds because, again, I could be wrong, and don't listen to me. I've always believed that computation, understanding how machine learning works, even now, is important for every designer to understand. Otherwise, they don't know how the world is actually working. I think of it like if you're a printmaker and you don't understand how the fibers absorb ink. Like my graphic design professor, his name was Kiyoshi Nishikawa. He had this like 20x loop that he would always force me to look at and stare at like the fibers, whatever. So, I mean, I think of like computation, math, data as a kind of paper that's important. Or if you don't care about digital, then if you want to go pure analog, I think that's okay too. It's just harder to find work that way, so it's kind of impractical in some cases. I wouldn't bet everything on it. The third thing is, if you are someone who comes from the majority, I would say the overrepresented majority, it's very good to look at inclusive design and inclusive practices because it helps you understand how little you understand of the world. Like when I was at Automattic, I had inclusion in my title, and that held me to a higher standard. And I learned so much of the process.
Did you find it difficult to actually carry that throughout your journey?
Oh my gosh. Well, yes, like for everything, like someone would say like, you care so much inclusion, you said the word crazy. That's not right. So, what word do you use? You use wild. Good.
Okay.
A lot of stuff is gendered. Have you thought of your gender pronouns? I haven't. So, and this is before this became very more common. So I was forced to think through these things much more carefully and with more empathy, which I think that in the past I hadn't considered. So I made a lot of mistakes on the way to learning, like, wow, I never thought of it this way.
Yeah. And it's always nice to stop once in a while and reflect on these kind of things. We were on a committee, we're designing our design cultures curriculum in order to actually make sure that we had a better representation of all the different communities.
My favorite way to illustrate that point is to visit the Tumblr. Congratulations, you have an all-male Tumblr, all-male panel Tumblr. It's a Finland project. Just visit it. It's like, oh my gosh, there's another panel with all males. It's like, it's not a good thing. It's a dumb idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go back to the questions. Thank you, Miho. Arjit again. What human-computer interaction do you think is the next big thing after driving cars?
I think that, well, I've long believed it, and it's not happened yet, but it should happen sometime, is there should be more generative experiences that really fit what I want. And the best example is what people think is the worst design thing, and that's Amazon.com. Because Amazon.com is different for every user. So there is no user flow wireframe diagram of the one type of user or 7 cohorts of users. It's custom to you. So I find that kind of interaction design that a designer hasn't created through some kind of personification or whatever to change when you can just generate interactions on the fly. Not saying it'll be done by AI, blah, blah, blah. It'll be done with humans is where it has to start.
Right. And we could, what's your take on the metaverse? Big buzzword right now.
Well, I tell everyone that I used to own an island in Second Life. So I was already a buyer of metaverse type stuff in the early 2000s. And so I think it's come back. I think it would have stayed longer if pandemic lasts longer, right? Because VR, AR tech is getting so good. But now that we're going back to IRL, I think that's going to be hard to want to put glasses on. So I think the metaverse's growth is going to be stunted.
Well, maybe some application will stick around for some very specific type of experiences. But
specifically for designing in 3D. If you look at most companies today, they design completely in 3D because of the pandemic. It's going to stay that way. So metaverse technology, to your point, is going to still be very relevant.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to stay. But in terms of usage, it might be we might take a bit of a slowdown as we go back to the good old analog world. Although, I mean, this is going to stick, the way we communicate like that. Another question coming from our John, your perspective on things is super insightful. For young designers today, which direction do you think is the best? Generalist or specialist? Where do you think resilience plays a bigger role? Oh, okay.
Well, on the first question, it kind of depends upon who you are. Some people like to be a Jill of all trades. Some people always like that. Some people like to focus. So I think it depends who you are. So I wouldn't judge that in a particular way. In terms of resilience, I think it's just an interesting topic. That's why I gathered a 50-page free PDF online. Just check it out. I just gathered ideas around how resilience is about the individual, and it's an emotional journey for people. to either be resilient or be non-resilient, and that's hard to recover from.
Is there a little exercise every morning that you do to be resilient? We talk about meditation.
No, but I try to exercise so my body doesn't like decay too quickly.
Actually, I do have a question for you. Is like, when you look at the resume and all the things you've done, is there something you haven't tried yet and you'd like to try? Are you into cooking? Are you into...
I can cook. No, I've always wanted to be a medical doctor, but now I know that cheese is a thing, so I might try that out. So,
well, if you want
to my life, Professor, must say.
To do an internship, we will accept you as an intern.
Yes, I can get accepted to the Cheese Academy.
Yes, the Cheese Academy. We specialize in very specific type of cheese. So you would like to try to be a medical doctor? No, that's too late.
It's probably too late, but that was on my list. I also wanted to be a lawyer for a while, but a little too late.
All right.
You never know.
Okay, let's take one last one, I guess, because I think we're coming to the hour. So don't want to be. I know you have a function tonight. Hi, Dr. Maeda. Thank you for your presence. Do you have any advice to new grads going into the workforce and how?
My gosh.
Thanks. Let's finish with that one.
April, you're asking a really hard question. I was just at South by Southwest, and there was someone. I was walking in the area, and then because they're all wearing masks, you can't tell who everyone is. I guess my hair looks like a certain way. So someone said, "Oh, I know who you are." Like, "Oh, I don't know who you are." "Oh, let's know." And so there was a young woman who's a speaker talking about AAPI, diversity issues in art. And she said to me that where she works, she's not allowed to do this kind of stuff. And so she can't be her authentic self at work. This thing that comes up a lot among the younger people, which is so important. The simple thing to do is work at a place where it does matter. There's so many employers who are like, we got to be like you. Like, let me give you an example. I met this person who was a really important person at Hewlett-Packard, who was a big computer company before Apple. And he said, and this is in the 90s, I think. And he said, and I have this daughter, and this daughter's using this thing called Facebook. And I just noticed one time, she put some pictures of herself that were kind of inappropriate. So we went on a walk on the beach together, me and her. And I said, I just want you to know that, once you put stuff out on the internet, it doesn't go away. And so you should be concerned. And she said, well, why should I be concerned? She said, well, you might hurt your chances with your job. And his daughter turned to him and said, well, that's okay, Daddy, because I'm not going to work for someone like you. I'm going to work for someone like me. And I was like, yes. So find a workplace that lets you be who you are.
Yeah. And I think that in 2022, it's sometimes could be a challenge, but it's going to be easier.
You can find it. You can find it.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find it.
Yeah.
All right. So I got a little plug to do before we go.
Go.
At 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we have our annual Yes Award show where Anahita hosts this awards ceremony, which recognizes our graduate students for the year 2021 and 2022. So guys, please register and attend. It's a really fun time, full of surprises, and Anahita does that with really master touch. John, thank you very much for being with us today. It was a pleasure to talk about what didn't feel like talking about technology and design, actually, but we're talking about life.
Hope it was useful to someone. Thanks for tuning in.
Right. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant rest of the day in Rhode Island.